welcome back, and howdy, Bart here, and this is going to be a live stream, and will be, of course, posted for view later. And the topic of this is going to be BSP geometries and making map assets, and how they can help to make life a little bit more interesting and fun, and creating new elements instead of like, well, I wish I had this or I wish I had that. You can make either temporary placeholders, or you can actually make full-on assets that you can use to populate a map with. You know, in previous videos we've made a few other things, but I'm going to go ahead and clear this map. Okay, and apparently the issue has not been solved with dropping. It just dropped already and haven't been streaming for a full minute yet. So you see, this is going to be a problem. So I'll try to catch up and keep rolling as I go, and hopefully it'll stitch itself together in the end automatically, but it's rather annoying to have it drop that frequently. So we'll look into that later. Okay, so making these BSPs, I've created a new map. I've gone into my landscape. I've created a new landscape, which is 1 tile by 1 tile, and I've set it at 0 height. So if you look at your landscape, it is set at -3100 by -3100 by 0. Having a 0 height lets you actually position things how I always put my landscape at 0, so I know that I'm working from a 0 plane and going from there. So with that, when we're creating things, we can match it up with the coordinates we're going to set up in blueprints as we make them work for us as well. So quickly, I'm just going to grab a set of tools that you want to use that will come in handy. Is if you take a geometry, bring in a box, and you go ahead and set up a 0, 0, and 0. Of course, you're going to adjust your Z height here momentarily, but you create this one, you set it in the center of the map, and this is going to be for configuring the normal height of your character in the game. So we're going to go ahead and put it back at 100, which puts the bottom of the BSP right there on the ground. We're going to resize the X and the Y to 100 and 100, and leave the Z height at 200. And what this is going to do is, you want to make sure your world setting is set up for your third-person game mode. When we go into it and we walk our character over to that 000 location, then if we make something that's that size, then we know that our players should be able to go into it. I've found that giving a little bit extra, if you actually take your box brush and make it 150 by 150, that's going to be 1.5 tiles by 1.5 tiles, and then go in there. You're going to have no problems with actually getting your character to walk through a door opening at 150 with 150 height, or 200 height with 150 on your width. And by having it set up for X and Y, doesn't matter where you place it, you're going to have that ability to have a door that's wide enough. You could even, if you wanted to, resize it to 125 by 125, and that's still going to be good enough. So when you walk through a door, you should have more than enough opening for that to work. So once you've created that, go ahead and click on it, and then click on it again to get it to change the name, or hit F2, and then we'll call this a door tool. And then we'll go ahead and make a new folder, create a folder called Tools, and I'm going to drag that into it. So now it's neat and organized, and we can actually, we don't want to delete it, we just want to drag it somewhere that we don't have to look at it until we actually need it. So it's out of the way, and we use our 000 location so that we can accurately put things down and make it a little bit easier. Another one that I like to create is, and this is for tools, and we're going to go 0, 0, and we're actually going to go a little bit larger than that, but we're going to go at 200, and then we're going to change our X and Y to 100 by 100 by 400. And by having our Z height here in our transform, that's going to put it in just the right spot. And what this is whenever you go into and you're building a house, 400 is a really good height for the interior of a house. You can jump without your head hitting it with default settings, and you can change it however you want. It doesn't hurt to bring it down to, say, if you had it at 300, then you need to adjust this to 150, which is half of your Z. So when you actually go into it, if you imagine the inside of your house being 300, your head will hit the ceiling, which may be what you want, but if you look at your height overall, that's actually not a bad way. So you can either do 300 or 400, depending on how big you want your rooms to be. But I'm going to leave this one at 300, and I'm going to call that one my room, or yeah, room. I probably spelled that wrong, but oh well. Room height tool, and I'm just going to drag that in my tool folder. And again, we'll just drag this over here out of the way because we don't need it right yet. So having these two tools set up, then we have the ability to drag those in and quickly look to see. Video is unavailable. Why does it say video is unavailable? I don't know if you guys have a video stream here. I'm going to try refreshing the page on my end. I try to watch it to see on my screen to see if it's actually working. I guess it was, but can you do this without content files loaded? Yes, I don't have anything but the third person and the starter content. You don't have to have a starter content, but where that comes in handy is you're starting to create individual items that you want to see how they're gonna look. When you go to place a BSP inside your map, if you want to have it already have the material applied to it, then you can go ahead and, like, say, select chrome, and now whenever I drag the BSP geometry into the map, it automatically has that chrome texture applied to it. You don't have to. Good now. Anyway, yeah, this bug, it's not on my end. My internet's fine, my computer's fine. I don't know why, but OBS seems to just stop streaming, so it might be an OBS problem. So I need to look at that later. So when I'm building a house or a building, I like to have no materials on it. So if you don't want any starter content and you just want it to be stripped down, that's probably not a bad. If you want to leave your starter content in, there are some other things you can bring in, but you have to remember that if you use the ones from the shapes area, these things are actually not BSP geometries. They're actually individual shapes that are static meshes, because if you mouse over them, it'll say that it's a static mesh. Some of them are actually quite usable. That one actually looks kind of cool. You got a donut, you got sphere, you got a plane, you got pyramids, you got all kind of different shapes. Okay, anyway, so since they are static meshes, they're going to behave differently, but that's a good and a bad thing. So if you wanted to add some piping into a map, and you wanted to add, say, a series of pipes going up and over a building or something like that, you could rescale them as well. They scale pretty well. So let's say if you're trying to join a couple pipes together and make something that's going to overlap into your scene, spend a few minutes lining them up, getting it to where they look right. You can do this in the blueprint, but it's always best to get an idea of how this looks here. So if you want to lay out some piping for a gutter system or drain system or whatever, and you can lay it out flat and then grab all three of them and stand them straight up if you want to. Um, and it's, it's usable. So now I can grab all three of them and rotate it up 90 degrees, grab it, pick it up. So if you wanted to have some cool pipes going through your scene to add some functionality to, or some features to it to where it looks like it's something. If you don't like the with the frequent dropping, you're just gonna have to bear with me on this. So if you run from a 000 location, it's so much easier to line things up whenever you do it that way. Yeah, whenever you're creating your own content, sometimes it's just hard to find what you need, and sometimes it just doesn't exist. Or if you don't want to actually take the time to learn a new software and learn how to 3D model and things like that, this is an easy way to get in here and create stuff for your map that you can use right away. So, you can take this BSP right here, and let's grab both of them, and let's grab a material. Let's throw on here the concrete grime, so it looks like rusty metal. It looks like crap. You'd want to use your own materials and stuff too, but the whole point is you can rapidly create things that if you wanted to make them be a representation, that's fine. But I actually like to... So yeah, I'm going to constantly be creating things that I'm going to use in the map. And, without getting into making custom materials and stuff, this is a good way to get started. I'm going to grab and throw down a wooden block. Like say if we wanted to create a table, there's a bunch of different ways we could do it. If we want to do it with BSPs, then yeah, okay, that's annoying. So yeah, you grab a cylinder, you throw it in there, you set up the basic dimension. Then again, set it down there at 000, because if you want to add other content to it, like a set of legs, this is very, very basic, by the way, but let's set the height at 110, and then we want to add a set of legs in. So to make a simple set of legs, we can grab a box. We're going to throw it in here, and we're going to set our X, Y 10 by 10, and again, this is a very, very simple basic setup. And then we can set our 0, 100. Now you can see that the table leg is going through the middle of it, so we want to adjust our Z height to, let's try with 90, and then we'll set our Z transform at half of that. We can actually go ahead and bump it up to 100, and then we'll put our Z at 50. So that's going to tell us that we need to adjust our tabletop, bring it down to 100. Now we've created a single leg, so that whatever we're setting that in here, we grab our box brush, and we need to bring it out so that it reaches the end of the table and looks like a table leg. So we move it around a little bit till we find a spot we're happy with. And again, we're going to keep this very simple. So around 175 looks good, so I can do negative 175. So if I want to create the next leg, I'm going to click off of it and click back on it again. Control C, Control V, and now with the new version, all I have to do is take away the negative, and now I've created the leg on the other side. So I could do that as well, and I'm going to click off of it, click on a different version. I'm going to add in a third one, and now we want the 175 here, and then we want this to go back to 0, and that created a leg on this side. So again, we just Control C and Control V, and then we want to go to this one, and we just want to add the negative in. So now we have all 4 coordinates set very quickly, very simply, and there we go. Now, they're rotated slightly, so if you look at your table from this direction, you're seeing the edge of the legs. You could have done this with round. You could have done this with the cylinder, but I did it with these square legs. But what if you wanted them to be flat going this way? Then you can take and rotate them with your regular transform, and you want to rotate them 45 degrees. So we'll do 45. We can actually grab all of them and set that transform to 45. And now we have all of them faced out that way. So if we go into our map, take a look at our table, look at our height, it's a little high. So knowing that our character is 200, this table is going to be a little bit on the big side. So let's actually take our tabletop, and I normally go around 80 for my height. So with that, now we just need to grab our legs. We need to go ahead and change that to 40, and we'll change our Z height to 80, and then that should have us a little bit better looking table height wise. So we walk by, it looks normal. It's a little bit below, so if we actually were in a chair, then we could actually sit directly in a chair. And again, absolutely simplistic. Alright, so with that very simplistic method of making a table, that's not something that I would actually throw into a map because it looks really, really cheesy. But you could do anything from creating all those different elements. Now, here's another thing that can come in quite handy, and I'm going to go ahead and zero out this new block. I'm actually going to bring it up a little bit just so we can look at it. Now, if you've never done this before, this can also come in pretty handy. We're looking at just a regular cube that we put in here, and it has the texture on it, because I wanted you to see what happens when we have the material on here when we do this. You come over here to the geometry editing tab. You can see it, the whole thing turns blue. Now I can grab this point right here and this point right here, and I can actually move those two up by themselves. So I can actually change the way it looks. Hitting Control Z to actually stop, undo what I just did. Now you grab a face and you pull it out like that. You can extend the whole thing that way without destroying your mesh. But what if you want to add in another segment? Then you have your extrude, and then you bring that out, and you can do that, and it's added in a second section right there that you can work with. So let's grab this one right here, this face, and let's drag it out this way, and you can sit there and edit that and work with that extrusion. I'm actually going to undo that. But now, if I'm done with the extrusion and adding in the extra part, I can now, let's say, grab this one and then Control left click to grab this one, and I'm going to bring this up to here, just whatever. So you see, it didn't apply the material to the new section that we created when we did the extrusion, but it's alright. I'm going to grab that far block and then Control left click, grab this one, drag this one down. We're not making anything in particular right now. We're just screwing around with showing you how to manipulate the BSPs to take a different form. So what if we want to grab this one and we want to drag it out a little bit. Let's make it go there. Let's grab this one and this one. Again, not making anything in particular, but we made our own custom shape here. And you could do this if you're also creating other elements and you need a little bit more control over what you're doing with it. So yeah, we just created that weird looking box. Different. What can you use that for? Well, I'm sure you'll find a bunch of different uses where I wish it was just a little bit larger. So with doing other things like stair rails, that's where that can actually come in handy. So I'm actually going to make some stairs, and I will do a linear stair, and we're going to 0 it. And it was at 20. So grab our stairs. Now, when you're creating those stairs, you can actually manipulate them with all this information here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to make mine 15 stairs high, and yeah, that's good enough just for an example. But if you wanted to, you could actually change your stair length to 40 to make them a little bit longer. The step height, I would stick around 20, no more than about 30, because when you actually go into the map, and let's actually move our player a little bit closer so we're not walking 15 days to get to where we're working on our stuff. So now we've created our stairs, and well, we want a set of floating stairs. So I showed this a couple times already. You grab your linear stair brush that you've created, and then what I want to do is I want to Control C and Control V to make another copy of it, and then I'm going to drag it back a little bit for now, but then I'm going to go ahead and change the brush type from additive to subtractive, and then I'm going to drag that back over, and I want to zoom in a little bit to where we want to line up the edge of the step with the edge of the cutout so that it looks like they're just floating blocks in the air. And the next thing I want to do is I want to change by removing one step. So if I have 15, I want to make my new subtractive one 14 so that I can butt that up against whatever I want to butt it up against. So now we have a set of invisible floating stairs. The next thing is to actually, I create these on my own now. Once I get the stairs to physically fit where I want them to go and they're dimensionally correct, then I make my subtractive one to delete that, and then I grab both of them, and with them together I can go ahead then come down here and create static mesh. And I'm just going to go to temporary spot on my asset, stairs, and wood underscore floater, call them whatever you need to call them to make them work for whatever you want them to work with. So I've just created them as a static mesh, and then I can go to the folder that I created and open it. I've already had some other stairs created here, so go to this one. Sadly, the best overall way to set up collision on these stairs is to come down to your project default. You could probably create a separate one. I haven't experimented with it, but I'm going to set my complex collision as simple and hit save. So now when I go back into my map, I can actually walk on my stairs. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't have any collision at all, and you would just walk through the stairs. But by doing it this way, you create a set of stairs that are floating that you can actually walk underneath. And then if these are the stairs that you need for your actual building to go from the first floor to the second floor, you can just keep dragging in versions of it so that you can do that, or you can Control C and Control V once you've already got a basic height set up, and you can add them in. So that's just going to get you your basics for your stairs. But with what we were doing before with the editing of the geometry, if you want to get in here and actually create a set of rails that'll work for your map, then that's where using the geometry editing can come in quite handy. So like say with this one right here, let's make sure it's sitting properly on the floor, and we want to create a banister system, we'll say, or in this case we'll do just a solid wooden piece. But if you want to create a banister, I wouldn't actually hesitate to do BSPs. But then once you create a static mesh, you could use a little bit different collision so that it's not, taking a very complex nature on it. You don't need the collision to work in between the rails and stuff, unless you want people to be able to shoot through it. But different story. So with that, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab, I don't know, pine. I'm going to grab a box, throw it in here, and I want to go ahead and set my Y to 20. The Z height, I'm going to stick it at 100. And then we'll go with X and the Y being, let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it 10 by 10. I know this is a little bit small. You can make it however big you want it to be. But I'm going to just place this right here. If I want an actual banister, you can create the individual. But what if you just want a solid railing, solid wall, or something of that nature? Well, we can look and see that our stairs, the length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roughly 700. So let's try with the X of 700. And then I just want to center that up onto our stairs. Set it with the base, and we'll go from there. It's a little bit long. We're actually going to make it smaller than what we need. Let's go with 500. And definitely is smaller than what we need, but we're going to fix that. So we want the base of this to be 90 degrees to the ground, straight up and down. And we want this edge right here to be the same at the very top as well. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I go into the editing mode. I will click on the back one first and then the front one. Just makes it easier to see the box with the arrows. Grab those two guys, and now I can drag that straight up and back and make that work exactly how we want it to work with. Zoom in, and we want to go off of the into the stairs, and the bottom of the stairs is our guide there, so that it actually gives us a full rail. So now, once we click back off of it, we actually have that rail system. So if you're creating a ramp going up to an airplane and you needed a side rail that looked normal and you want to create some other stuff to go along with it, and you see it doesn't match up the way we had it before. So what I would actually do is I would actually move this back. So I'm going to select the brush. I'm going to go back to my editing, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this point and control left click on this point, and we're going to start this. Oh, we want to grab the top ones as well, so let's grab that one and that one. Let's actually move it back so that it's off of the back of the step here. So we can just move it to right there, and that should look a bit more uniform. Now what we can do is we can also grab this face right here if we were so inclined, and go to the extrude tool and close, and then drag this forward to that, and there we go. We could do that at the very top if we needed to add for a landing or whatever else. We could add that in. So I'm actually going to click off of that and then come back over here. And we can click on our faces again, right click, I'm sorry, not here. Select all adjacent surfaces, and then we want to display both materials and assign the rest of it that pine color. Now you'll notice that these two don't match up. The materials are going in a different direction. So I'm going to grab this one just for the sake of it, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And if you wanted to, you could actually sit here and line up the grains by using your transform tools here. And you can actually line up your materials There's another way of doing this too, so this is just one way to do it. Now if you wanted this one and this one to be the same, sometimes this works for me, sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to select both of these faces and click optimize, and now I can go back in there and go back to this mode, select both faces, and select all adjacent. We're going to go ahead and look at our materials again, and there we go. That works out pretty good most of the time for lining up your materials. And I probably should have done the same thing here. Go back to this tool. We're going to click this face, control left click this face, and optimize. And see, it removed the material, but see, it also added a another line here, triangulated that. So that may not have worked as good for this particular face as it did before. So I'm just going to undo that and leave it the way it is. And this, I will go back into my regular mode, select that face, and I just rotate that one and fix that one. So it would be easy enough to do either way. So now we've got that, and if we wanted to copy it over, then it's just as easy of grabbing a box brush here and Control C, Control V, and we can actually move it around. Now the problem is we cannot combine two BSP geometries with one static mesh. So what we'll have to do is we'll grab this guy, and let's actually grab it here, and let's give it some precise coordinates, because I like to be clean and neat and organized and have everything symmetrical and so forth. So first off, our stairs, they need to be zeroed out. And unfortunately, since they're 200 wide and it's lined up now off of this edge instead of the center, then we need to correct for that. So we need to split the difference, and we want to set it at -100 and fix the height here. Put it at 25. So I'm actually going to delete one of these. So yeah, you want to line things up now before you actually create the static mesh, so that you can actually get it right. You want it right now before you actually create the static mesh. With these are just temporaries for me. I'm going to end up deleting them. So it doesn't really matter so much for me. I want it to be just a little bit proud, so I'm going to leave it like that. And then Control C, Control V, create a copy of it, and I'm going to overlap it into my stairs and line up this one. You know, you're looking at setting it up this way, I would say probably 95, and then go back to your other one, make sure it's set to -95, and we had both of these set to 0.01. I'm just doing that to bring them all together so that they're locked in to the point where I want. And we see that 95 is not going to work. So let's look at that one again. Let's go with, I don't know, let's go with -96. Puts me just the right spot. So then I want to come over here and move that one to 96. So that's where we look good. Now, what I would do is I would grab both of these two and lock them together, since I want them to stay together with the stairs. And if that's what I wanted to do, if I only wanted one side, I'd leave one side. But I can grab both of these two guys, get them together, create a static mesh, put it in the same location as I did before, and I would actually call this my stair rails. Could even do this in a temporary location, but now that I have two separate meshes that are both available here, I can actually drag them separately into the map. With both of them, you want the collision to work, so let's grab our collision. And that's just not going to work because it's trying to put it on both of them at the same time, and that's not what we want. So we want to go ahead and remove our collision, and then essence of time, I'm actually going to just set it to use complete like that. So I don't need that. So with that, we just added a basic collision system so that we can actually utilize the rails. I would have probably been best to grab one rail at a time, add collision, and then use that static mesh to make your rails separately. You really have to experiment a lot, and doing all this stuff, really you're going to end up doing a lot of mixing and matching and changing around till you get your BSP geometries to be what you want. So I'll grab both of these now, and I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to convert actors to static mesh, and then I go to my folder where I'm putting them, and floater with, oh, we'll just call it floater rails, whatever. So now I have both of these in here, and I don't need them anymore. And once I've converted it back into a static mesh again, then I have completely lost every bit of my collision. So if I were to go into play, this new one now has no collision again. So we would end up having to go back into it anyway. And again, I'm just going to come down here and use complexes as my simple. And now I have a good working set of stairs that I can actually use and work with. So, like I said, so I'm going to grab a BSP geometry. I'm going to go ahead and select my oak wood for my flooring. I'm going to grab this, drop it in here. I'm going to zero it out. And it doesn't matter the Z height right now because I know where I want to be, but I'm going to set my Z height to 10, which means I need to be half of that. And yeah, it's a bit more annoying than funny on my end whenever it drops just completely at random right in the middle of a sentence. Really just, it's fun. So here's what I want to make is I want to make a item that I'm going to use, say, for a city map, and say if I'm inside of a shopping mall and I want to create a store. Well, stores in a mall are usually set up in either of two ways. Usually they're deep instead of wide. So if we look at that aspect of it, that's one thing. But if you look at the stalls in a food court, they're set up wide in the front, and they're not very deep in the back either. So if you're going to set up, say, a mall store as an example, I'm not actually creating a mall, by the way, but to create that store area, I would go ahead and create the floor for it first, get my footprint that I want, and let's start off with 2,000 deep and 1,000 wide, and then let's take a look at that. So this would be the interior of our store. So we walk around our main store area. So we're going to pretend that this is actually a mall where we walk in the door here, and this is all the fun stuff. Well, we need a front door system that has all the railings and the glass and things of that nature. So I would say go ahead and create that. You can grab your BSPs. Let's grab chrome material. We're going to grab a box. We're going to drag it into the map, and we're going to zero it out. And remember, we had our tool over here for our ceiling height. We're actually going to make our room height at 400, so it feels more like a store. So our Z height is going to go to 400, and we need to set this at 210 to compensate for the floor height. And then we want to make the width of our frame for our door, we'll say 10 by 10. And yeah, that's good enough for now. So we need to get this positioned. Well, we know that we made our wall at 1,000. So let's actually set this to -495. And that should put us right there on the edge. Yep, it did. So we can Control C and Control V, make another version, and we can take off that negative to make it at 495. So that's the other side wall. And of course, we need to add some into the middle for our door. Well, we can actually manually set this up, because we know if we want our door to be 120 by wide, then we want to set this at -125, and then Control C, Control V, and then we want to put this at 125. So we now have our spacing for our doorway to actually walk in. It's kind of a tall ceiling here, so that's fine. We set it a little bit wider so that we can actually put a door frame in if we need to. We can adjust it however we want, no big deal. And now I want to grab another BSP, and let's create our Z height of 10 and our X depth of 10, and now our Y of 1,000. We want to set it at 0, 0, and 400. Actually, we'll go at 405. This should frame it up pretty nicely there. So now we have our top frame, and we know that our door only needs to be around 200, so we'll Control C, Control V, add another one in, and let's set this at 220. May not be high enough. Yeah, we'll go at 230 just to raise the door frame up just a hair more. So that looks good. I mean, that's, if we want to add more, let's put a bottom rail in. So I'm going to grab this rail, Control C, Control V, and let's drag one down here to 15. But we don't want it to actually go all the way across the bottom of the floor. So we need to actually just make it smaller. And let's make it at the size just enough to fit right here. So we need about 380. Looks about right, actually. And so this 0, I think we got that at 300. Well, it was just right. Me and Mr. got to be perfectly lined up. So 310 and 15 on height. So now we've got that part, and we can Control C, Control V, and just add a negative here. So that gives us that. So we can set up a double door system that'll swing open, let us in and out. And we have the framing for it. We just need some glass. So here's where the fun part would be. If I made, and I'll show you an example, grab my glass material. I'm going to grab another BSP, drop it in here, and we're going to go 0, 0, 0. Now, see how it's going through there? It's not subtractive, but glass is see-through, so it's going to let you see through whatever you put it in. So if it's overlapping that, it's just going to act like it's cutting a hole in it, and that's just not going to work. So we're going to have to make one panel of glass for here, one that'll fit here, copy it, and paste it there, there, and there. So we can have it unified. So let's go ahead and create the one for the top piece right here. And let's go ahead and try to center it up the best that we can. But we know that we need to make our X as 5 to make it kind of thin. And we want to make our Y and Z match the opening. So let's make it a little bit wider on our Y. We're at 200. Let's try 210, which just experiment with it. And you really want to do it with these numbers. It's easier to grab it up here and make it work, but don't. Resist the urge. 240, and I know that we're going to be at 250 is going to be good. But I'm going to actually make it 245 so that it only just breaks through. But we don't want it to break through at all, so we need to rescale it till it's not breaking through either of the sidewalls. Wrong number. So there, we are not breaking through just yet. This should be zeroed out, but we're offset. 0. So that number should be zeroed out. That's why having your 0, 0, 0 locations comes in quite handy. Because now we really we want to stretch this glass so it just fills the opening. So 235 is not enough. 236. 239 is pushing us right there at the edge where we need to be. So then we just need to change our Z height. So again, let's go ahead and check our Z at 200, which we know was wrong, and 180, still wrong. 140, yeah, definitely wrong. So just experiment with it. Yes, typos are lovely. And just experiment with it, get it right, make it look right now, and you won't have any issues later down the line. Spend the time now when you're actually creating these items, and it'll all work out. Yeah, see, we're just creating a storefront so far for them all. We just wanted to make this front piece. So let's try 155 and just experiment with it. It's about as much fun as watching paint dry, trying to get these numbers just right. And you could actually grab the thing and move it, but I would rather do it this way because I am very OCD. 160. Because if we break through, see what happens is the top edge is now you can actually see into it, but we're not on the bottom, so we need to lower our actual height. Let's look at 315. Let's try to split up our height a little bit better to get closer to the middle. So I'm going to let this bump it up a hair more. 242. And I'm going to call it good enough for what we're doing here. And actually I adjusted the wrong one. 163. I'm going to call this good enough. It's not really good enough if I was doing a finished product, but I'm just going to delete this project later anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So take the time, get it just right, and yeah, well, this could be the intro to your club as well, you know. So that way, we've got that pane of glass. It's going to be good enough. We're going to Control C and Control V, and we're going to grab this one. And we found that our center was at 300, roughly. We can then, if you wanted to use this transform tool with glass, I would imagine it would be okay. because you're not going to notice any tearing in the texture because it's glass, right? So you do whatever works for you, but if you're doing complex textures or materials, then you definitely don't want to use these transform tools. You want to use these numbers to actually get it just right. In this particular situation, it's not going to matter a heck of a lot. So with that, I'm make sure it's 0, 3, 10, and yeah, that's lovely. So now we can just copy and paste this one, Control C, Control V. We'll drop one down, and we see that it's not going to fit. So let's actually, this one should fit over here. We'll drop that glass in. We'll Control C, Control V. Drop this one down here, the new one we just created. We'll make this work. And again, take your time, get it right. Don't take shortcuts when you're creating these things for your map. And we'll Control C, Control V, and we'll grab this guy and throw it over here. So now that we've made this all out of BSP geometries, we can actually come over here. We see that we have collision. We can't walk through it, but we can walk through the door. Everything is good. And we would make our doors separately so that we could actually use an animation system on the doors or apply physics to them so you can walk in and out of the doors that way. So now that we've got our beautiful storefront completed, instead of just sitting here and dragging all these guys together, let's go ahead and grab these guys and let's create a static mesh. And we're just going to go to our assets folder and whatever we're going to put in the root, since I don't have a folder. Make folders for everything. Be organized. Store front, and then create static mesh, and then since it created it for us, we can drag it to our position, put it where we need it to go, and that's the front of our store. Not this glass. If you want a breakable glass, instead of combining it all together, you create your glass panel that you want, and then you would have to create the glass a little bit differently, each panel's size separately, so that it is destructible. That's something I'll have to look into for later on the line, because it will be nice to have destructible glass. You see, now we don't have collision, so we're going to end up having to put collision back on our piece by going to the location where we told our assets to be created. So now we can see we got it in here. Let's try doing the 26, and no, it did not create. It's just made it into one big opening. So disconcerting. The easiest way to get around that is to simply be a pain in the butt and change your collision defaults. Probably not the best way to do for often, but we're just going to do it that way. So now compile and save. Well, look, we have a solid and we can walk through the door frame. So you'd want to create your doors and then duplicate them, so that you can actually make them functional. You don't have to create a left and a right. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. But when you don't have the assets that you need, you can actually create your own assets by doing so. And someone asking me a question in Discord while I'm actually doing a live stream, so I can't answer him. I could, but he could be watching my stream. So that's our storefront. If we want to make our walls, again, it's just a matter of I'm pre-making these things so that they look eh. So yeah, that's a very good description on how it looks. Meh, whatever. So grab my wood, pine, grab my box, and thank you, Skibby, for answering that. We're going to go ahead and create that wall, and of course we want to 0, 0, and I'm going to create my wall at 210 here because I'm going to set my Z height to 400, and then I want to make my wall height, which is going to be my Y-axis, at 20, and we want it to be 2000 long for my X. No, we don't actually want it to be 2000 because it's going to stick through, possibly. Yep, so to make that look a little bit nicer, we can actually do 1990, 1990. So there's less overlap. You're not going to see the top overlap anyway. You're going to see some of the wall right there. If you don't want to, then whatever. Just change your wall to 10 and make sure you put your spacing correctly. We're at negative 500 and we're zeroed this way. It's going to overlap. That's why I do it the other way. I'd rather see it on the inside. So we actually want to know that we're at 500. We're at 10 wide, so we want to do negative 490. So that the wall stays inside this way instead of overlapping. So then we just can Control C, Control V, create our other wall, and we're going to take our negative off. We got our sidewall there. Alright, so that's our sidewalls. We just need a rear wall, which essentially is going to be, let's make it a different color. Let's make it weird. I like making things weird. Grab your ocean texture and don't drag it anywhere. Just select it. Grab your BSP. We're going to select that. And we're going to 0, 0, and 210. And actually we want to make this, we're going to drag it back to here. So let's make our X to be our normal 10, and then we want to 1990. No, dumbass. You guys let me put that number in there. We're at 2000 deep, so we want it to be at 990. And we wanted our Z height to be 400. The reason why I put that ocean texture on there is, Skippy, it's all your fault. I blame you. Actually make it 990 this way. So putting that water texture on makes you a living texture. You can actually come in here and look, and you actually get a moving wall. Looks kind of funky, right? I like doing that every now and then just to kind of throw things, a curveball. Now, do you want to put a roof on? You can, but I want to actually convert this back into, now what if we want different storefronts? We've already converted the main part into a static mesh. Whatever. So I'm not going to. I'm going to leave the storefront separately, so if we want to, we can change it around, put a different style storefront on, put 2 separate doors in. We'll use the storefront separately from the rest of the store. If you leave it open this way, you can always add the roof in later. I can just grab my floor here, Control, and I want to select it from here, Control C, Control V, and I want to set my height now to 395. Now let's actually go ahead and put it directly on top. Let's put it at 4.